Welcome to CrossPlatform podcast, where we discuss how to solve productivity problems across platforms. I'm Augusto Pinaud,
And I'm Art Gelwicks.
and today we're going to talk about calendars, Google calendars to be more
Yeah, the
specific,
thing that
right?
everybody loves.
But nobody wants to use.
No, and we're gonna. Well, okay, we all grew up with paper calendars, the thing on the wall, the thing on the desk blotter, all the different variants of taking notes of this stuff. Then you move into things like a day planner or a Covey journal, and you have your calendars in there. Uh, And as we got heavy into digital, well, digital calendars were the logical thing. And I think probably the biggest you could probably make an argument one way or the other. I don't have the numbers at my fingertips, but Google Calendar or Outlook Calendar are like 1 and 1A when it comes to the world of calendars in use. So today we're going to focus on Google Calendar because it's something we both use. We know it's very much a multi-platform solution. If you've got an Android device, you're using Google Calendar. I can almost guarantee it. If you're using Windows, Google Calendar's right there in your browser, that kind of thing. But rather than talking about, and this following on what we did last time, uh, rather than talking about the specific features of this is what the Google Calendar is, this is how it works, yeah, and you can find that place anywhere. What we want to really talk about is one, how are we using it? Two, what are our challenges with it, which are we both
Mhm.
never have a problem with finding challenges with a piece of software, do we? Uh, and three, just some recommendations around using Google Calendar. But I think, and this is for the listeners who are going, yeah, but I don't use Google Calendar. Well, as we talk through this stuff, I'm going to say put this in the lens that you look at your calendar tool with. And if you hear a feature or a function or an item that sounds interesting, go look in your app and see if it supports that type of a thing. You may find because honestly, a calendar is a calendar is a calendar. A lot of this functionality is duplicated over and over and over again. So if we suggest it or identify it in Google Calendar, the odds are pretty good that the calendar application that you're using, if you're using one, which if you're listening to this, I'm pretty sure you probably are, uh, will have that same function. So let's start with Augusto. How do you use Google Calendar?
So, my arrange of calendars is complicated. I, my family and my personal calendar lives on iCloud. Okay. Work, my company lives in Google's calendar. Okay, my company lives on Google ecosystem, and some of my clients live in Microsoft. So that said, my calendar is normally a mess. It's a very busy calendar. Um, what I like about Google Calendar and the reason why my company lives on a Google Calendar is that it's Google has done an effort to make it very universal that Apple has not. Okay, if I send you an invitation via Google Calendar, okay, I know you will receive it, you will accept it regardless what you use. You can be on an Apple device or iCloud, you can be on Microsoft, you can be on Google, or you can be on your own, and it will work. And there is an incredible value to that, especially on the business environment. So that is the reason for which when I have clients saying, oh, but I live on iOS, business, sadly, to this day, need to continue living into Google or Microsoft. Why? Because compatibility. When I send invitations from my personal calendar to other people, it's always a mess. It's what it is. Apple, to this day, for a reason that is beside me, okay, has decided not to fix that dumb issue that I'm sure it is a simple issue, but it's Apple. Okay, they wanted to work great on the Apple ecosystem, not so great when you interact, and things like that are Apple wise. It is like what they did with the iMessage. No, we don't know how to fix iMessage, but Google say fine, then we will fix it. Okay, and it's now
Hmm.
fixed on the Google side. Okay, Apple will have not fixed it. It's who they are. It's part of the things this organization do, as much as I like them. But because of that, I do. So I with Google Calendar through the iOS application, okay, mostly. That said, it's open in Microsoft Outlook for the iPad, the web, and I even have the application, the Google App Calendar app. Why? Well, as a productivity consultant, it is important for me to know how they interact everywhere because I need to go. Calendar is one of those applications that everybody use, and everybody has a question when they talk to me as a consultant for business or as a coach on the personal side. So I spend a lot of hours playing with that and explaining people how to do this and teaching people how to subscribe to external calendars and the stuff. I'm going to say again, for work, that's where it leads. That's where I subscribe more of this, most of the stuff, because it allows me to turn on and off very easy. It's very robust. And to this day, I have had only one problem with Google Calendar and was completely user related. Okay. I made a wrong change. And when I call Google and say, what's happened here? Say, well, you're an administrator. I say, I am the administrator. The guy starts laughing and say, well, then you deleted. Okay. Say, what you mean? And when he explained to me, I was like, oh, yes, I remember when I did not read that window. Do you want to continue? Warning, okay? And I can continue. I'm in a hurry, okay? And it was completely, but they also give me the support to fix it and bring it back, so I did not lose any of the information. And that was the moment that I decided to stay for a very, very long time.
Yeah, Google Calendar, I use it too. I've used it for a number of years. Um, I've used it primarily for two reasons. One, uh, it's fairly straightforward. If you have a Gmail account, you have Google Calendar. It's right there. There's nothing else to set up. And two, it's the one that everybody else pretty much uses. I mean, there is that benefit of ubiquity. If somebody
Mhm.
says, "Hey, check my calendar," well, it's a Google Calendar. Uh, their ability to provide easy sharing of calendars is very compelling. That's when I look at my calendar right now, there's really three calendars that I have in the one. I have my personal calendar, I have our family calendar, and then I have a professional calendar for a group I work with. And it's all in one spot. It's easy to work with. Is it the best interface ever? No. I struggle with the interface all the time, but at least I know everything is in there and it's pretty straightforward to work with. So, from a functional standpoint of doing the job that I ask, which is to not let me forget about things, it does that job. It also has, and this is kind of getting down in the rabbit hole quickly, but it has the ability to talk to other software very well. For example, Todoist, like we've talked about in the past, you can connect Todoist to your Google Calendar. So you can see things in Todoist that are on your calendar. That's really useful. Why? Because then I don't have to go look at your calendar. I can just look in Todoist and see the different scheduled items and see things like that. So that cross compatibility is really compelling. Uh, when you're working with Google Calendar, how do you really use it? Is it more for just keeping track of, appointments, or is it more than just appointments?
I would say mostly appointments, okay, or events. I don't have tasks. I don't have um, tasks or projects or next action things on my calendar. As I said, I manage the family calendar. Okay, that at this point it is basically five calendars. So there is a family calendar. I have two kids, my wife and myself. Uh, and they are color coded and they synchronize to different places. So the kids synchronize on mine, and I need to see where they are, and same thing with my wife who travels once in a while. So I need to know she's here, she's in the office, she's all that interaction happen in the calendar, and it has taken me years to perfect it in the sense of getting the others on board. But now it is very easy because it is a conversation that don't need to happen unless need to happen. And what I mean with that is, for example, my daughter professional competitively swim. Okay, so all her swim times are in that calendar. Okay, so unless, and we already know I drop her off. Okay, if I cannot drop her off, that's the only moment I need to discuss that event in the calendar. Other than that, I just need to open and see where they are, and it's good. So that saved me a lot of times. And as my kids will repeat, if you ask them, they will tell you if it's not on the calendar, do not exist. Okay, because I think I have said
Mhm.
that line so many times. But for them now, it's ingrained. Even it's so ingrained that my son, who is 10, go to the calendar to see what's coming that is going to be fun. Okay, he wants to know what is in the calendar. It's normal for him to look into the calendar to see what's going to happen over the weekend. And sometimes he come and say, why did we have to do this lunch on Saturday? Well, what we're going to do. Okay, but it's great. It's normal. It's part of their life. So that's part of what it managed. And then it managed three companies. Okay, so the three companies that I have, the productivity consultant, the coaching, okay, and a tech writing company. And that make my calendar um, interesting. Okay, there is things like Personal Productivity Club. Okay, I'm very involved into the Personal Productivity Club as a founding member. So I have a calendar, a shared calendar of any event that happens there that is reflected into my calendar. Do I go to all those events? No, but I want to know all those events are happening. So the difference for me in the that's what I mean, mostly appointments or events. So when they are
Mhm.
and they color coded, for example, the things I have a calendar that is called things cool to know. Okay, that is on white. The color picked for that calendar is white. Okay, because what it means is things that you say, hey, Oktoberfest next year is going to be October the 7th. Do you want to come? It's February. I don't know what's going to happen in my life in October the 7th, but I don't want to lose that. So I will go to the calendar and capture October the 7th, okay, Oktoberfest with Art on Pennsylvania.
Mhm.
Okay. And it's on that wide. So as I get closer that doing my review, I will catch that event. I will decide yes, no, I don't know. And if it's a yes, then it will move to the appropriate calendar. Okay, in this case, will be to my personal calendar or to the family calendar. So that's how my calendar move. I don't have tasks. I don't have things like that. The rest lives in somewhere else. The task management. If I have, for example, cancel the Apple TV thing, okay, that never gets to the calendar. That lives um, on to do it for me, or must be depending if
So
it's work or personal.
so it's interesting you called out the task part of it. What about things like all-day events? Do you put all-day events on your calendar? So
Yes,
you have a
all day events
reminder
are
like
in my
I'm
calendar.
looking at mine Sunday, September 12th, Super Bowl. There's an all-day event reminding me that that's happening on that particular day. So you track those on there as well. Because I know some people are kind of hesitant to have things on their calendar that don't have defined times on that calendar. They're just kind of lumped. And this is one of the, as we get into the what are some of the problems with the application, all day events are one of the challenges I have with their user interface because if you have five, six, seven all day events that are going on and they may just be all day reminders, it becomes very difficult to see them because they can't turn into this like hamburger at the top of the day.
It is a hamburger. I have birthdays. I have all day events. So, for example, if you say Super Bowl, okay, and actually say, hey, Super Bowl with Art, okay, and we have not yet defined. I don't know nothing about the Super Bowl. So if you told me
Mhm.
Super Bowl and you invite me to your house, I don't even know what time I need to show up because I have no clue. Okay, so until you tell me, okay, you need to come in my house, we're going to be watching this event from time to time. That is the moment that will stop being our whole day event to now we'll go to a particular time slot. Other than that, it will stay. But it's useful because are things that I know will happen that day, but I don't know when. The other thing, having that many calendars and that many colors, it really helped me very quick to know what it is. Okay, so if I see purple, I know exactly what it is. Something related, my daughter. If I see brown, that's something that four of us will go, or at least more than two of us will go. Okay, blue is my son. Orange is something that is me on my personal calendar. Red, I know is my wife, and then I use different greens for work. Okay, but it allows me to look at the calendar. If I look right now at the calendar and I see, I can see right now and it's an orange, I know it's an event that I will go, but nobody else will go. So I'm seeing all that calendars, maybe the many years I've been doing this that way, it's very easy to see, when it's going to happen, what. I also have a calendar that is black, okay? That are certain routines that I try to do daily. So I wake up at certain time,
Mhm.
I try to do some exercise, some meditation, okay, wake up the kids, okay? All that happen between 4:30 and 6 in the morning, okay? And it's code in my calendar in black. Why? Because I want my watch to be reminding me of the time. So, for example, I wake up my kids every morning. Okay, something that I really enjoy. I understand it's going to end at some time, but right now it's happening. Okay, so I go 15 minutes with each kid in bed. Okay, and I lay with them, but I need to pay attention because if that is not, by really with the proper alarm and I get distracted, okay, they're going to go late to school. So it need to be it's a very precise act. So I like the fact that it's hard coded in the calendar, so I can decide, and I get the notifications. Hey, it's 6:45. You need to change to the other kid. Okay, so it's 7 a.m. now. You need to start getting, their school meals packed and ready for go, and all those kind of things. All that is hardwired in my calendar. Other things that I have on that black calendar called routines is I have an alert. It's a 10-minute event in the middle of the morning and a 10-minute event in the middle of the afternoon. In the middle of the morning, it's at 10:30 a.m., 10:20 to 10:30. Okay. And it's check where are you going today. That's all that it does. Okay. Why? Because I need to be reminder of of the direction that I'm trying to get. I need to be reminded because that's time at 10:20, 10:30 in the morning. There's two things that have happened. Okay. Or I've been having the day as I planned, very unusual. Okay. Or the fires had already come to my door. Okay. And I need to figure out how I'm going to corral those fires instead of letting them take the day over. Okay. Or say, you know what? Nothing is going to happen today because of these fires. That's fine. But that allows me to regroup. Okay. The other thing that is on that calendar is to pick up the kids to school. Why? It's happen every day, and I do it. And the last thing that happened is at 3:20 to 3:30. Okay. I get a reminder that says, and a question that says, "What are you grateful for? Why?" And again, I said, this is code because that is the moment that most people start running out of fumes. Okay. And that is the moment
Right.
where your day start getting darker. Okay. Why? Because you're tired. You have been beaten. Okay. You feel like, oh, I was going to go this and hold on. Let's take 10 minutes, 5 minute, 10-minute break and figure out what are you grateful for. Because that for me and the clients who have implemented this has changed the next 2 hours or 3 hours of work. even has effect when you get home. Because if you make that change 3:30, it's 3:20 to 3:30, okay, and you work still 2 more hours, but now you work from that being grateful perspective. Okay, when you leave home or when you get downstairs from your office to see the family, you come with a completely different attitude. So
Okay.
those things are there and they're very, very important and they are managed in the calendar.
It's interesting we talk about the tasks on the calendar and not putting them. There is actually a feature in Google Calendar now to add tasks to your calendar.
Mhm.
If you go to the create button, there's a task option. It will create, I think it's about a 30-minute, whatever the default is, a 30-minute block of time on your calendar. Allows you to assign a task and add it to the Google Tasks list to track, but then you can move it to a particular when you think you're going to do that task. And that takes me into the next question. Um, One of the things that people really espouse, I know Francis, who we do shows with all the time, espouses about time blocking and allocating times on your calendar to do specific things, but they're not really appointments. I've heard them referred to as appointments with yourself. Do you do anything like that? I don't. I don't specifically because my time is a little too fluid for that. Uh, but do you do anything like time blocking? And if so, how do you find that works for you within Google Calendar?
It's rare. For me, it's rare. Okay. Like yours, my time is fluid and I like that. So um, for me, it's rare to go into time blocking. But when I do time blocking, it's not about a task, it's about something that needs to happen. So I take it as a calendar, as a meeting. It's just a meeting with myself. So I sit, if we say now, I'm, okay, hey, I need to block, I need 2 hours to catch up with the episodes of CrossPlatform. Yes, that's actually okay, need to happen. Okay. I will go and then, but I will not put that the task is just okay, this time I need to protect for that, and that is the task I'm going to do. The reason I don't like that very much, and I don't recommend it very much, is if you don't own your time, and I don't, okay, as I said, I
Mhm.
have 2 kids, okay, and I have 3 companies. Okay, sorry, I don't. My time is owned by somebody else. Okay, and actually happened today in the pre-show. We are getting ready, and my phone rings with a
Yeah.
client. Okay, and I needed to take the call. Okay, so if I block the time, again, and cross-platform is blocked in my calendar, but still those things will happen, and when those things happen, what I do. That's the reason tasks don't go there. Because if this call was very short, it was something specific, I did it as fast as I can, gone, fine, we went back to the show. But if this is a much larger emergency and I need to look at you and say, hey, sorry, fire is coming and I need to bail, okay,
Hmm.
those tasks in there, okay, is something else that I need now to remember to bring back. And
Right.
I'm not very good at that part. I'm very good at looking at my calendar and understand these are appointments or events. Simple. I'm very good at looking at my task management. Okay, this is all that I need to do. Okay? But I'm not very good at re-imputing information. Okay, that's part of the reason why I love the labels into to do is because it allows me to do a smart list. Okay,
Hmm.
because I want to be able to go through the day and changing those perspective of things, but I cannot reorganize them. I cannot go and say, okay, these 3 things I put them in the morning as priority, but now the world got on fire and I need to take the priority out. No, no, that need to be almost semi-automatically without me moving anything. I cannot move task. I remember many years ago you needed to move it from this task list to this other task list. I love the fact that I can now just add or remove a label and that then will never move out of the place that is on the system.
So, thinking about Google Calendar, what would you say are your three favorite features of Google Calendar? We'll start with the good ones and
compatibility,
then we'll go to our struggle points. I'm sorry, go ahead.
compatibility, compatibility, compatibility. Okay, the
Okay,
fact that
well,
you
that's
can
easy.
access that thing and is robust everywhere, it's a winning. And I said this because when you go to Microsoft side, okay, now you start having the compatibility issues, okay, can be limited by the administrator. Okay, in Google, you have Google Calendar and you can access that thing anywhere. Okay, when
Mm-hmm.
you go to Microsoft, that can be limited, and it's annoying. It's very annoying.
Mm-hmm.
I have a client that is extremely annoying that I cannot add in their calendar, can only be open in Microsoft Outlook. So it forced me to add every one of my other calendars to Microsoft Outlook for when I want to see a full version or a full view of this. Okay. So Google, the clients I have worked in the past, larger and smaller, who live on the Google ecosystem, I don't see that. They can let me at it. They can do all these beautiful things. So that for me is the winning component of Google. The second, the additional one, since I
Mm-hmm.
said compatibility, 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 is the fact that you can get a very comparable experience regardless the device you get. Okay, even
Sure.
if you decide to do their own the iOS app or the Google app or put them even on Outlook for Microsoft, your experience is pretty much consistent, and that's something that Google has done incredibly well.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with you in that standpoint. There's three, my three, and they're smaller ones, but they're ones I'll just throw out there, ones that people may not be all that familiar with. If you're viewing Google Calendar, the numbers 1 through 5 on your keyboard will take you through the different views of the calendar. So one will take you to day, two will take you to week, three will take you to month, four will take you to the 7 day view, and five will take you to the agenda. And I find myself all the time bouncing between 3 and 5. It's a great way for me to see the month and see the agenda without having to jump and click around. It's just
Mhm.
very convenient in that way. So that's one of my favorite features. The second one is if you've created a meeting, not just a regular appointment, but you've created a meeting that has multiple people in it, one of the features that you pick up is the ability to send an email from that meeting invite to everybody who's invited to that meeting with a single click. There's an envelope that shows up in the meeting description. And if you click on that, it'll automatically populate everybody who's invited into an outbound email. That's really convenient. I have used that numerous times. It's just nice to know that everybody gets wrapped into the same conversation. You don't have to go and worry about is somebody going to get left out. And the third one, which is kind of ironic that I like this one because I often will espouse that the last thing you want to do is spread your files out through different applications, but you have the ability in Google Calendar to attach files to meetings. So, for example, if there's a document you need to review during a meeting, you don't have to worry about did it get through to somebody? Did it, did you put it in a shared area? You can just attach the file to be reviewed to the meeting. And as long as they have the meeting invite, they then have access to that document. It's very useful that way. I like those kinds of features. And there's other features too. There's actually a premium feature that allows you to do appointment scheduling, which is very similar to Microsoft Bookings or Calendly and some of the others, where you can say, okay, this is when I'm available, pick from these times, which is not surprising that they did that since it is a very popular feature on the other platforms. Unfortunately, with Google, they made that one a premium where they could have kind of won without it being a premium. But that's one of those core nice features. Now, we had 3 wins. What are 3 things that you struggle with Google Calendar, or you wish they would fix or improve or change or whatever? And if you want, I'll start on that if you want to
Yeah.
think about it a minute. Okay. So my first one that I struggle with is just the overall UI. I think the calendar interface itself that they've put together, especially at the day level, is very it's a waste of space in a lot of cases. There's a lot more that they could do to clean this up and to make it more usable, especially at the event level. So, for example, if I'm looking at an event on my calendar and I have day view, the only thing I get is the name of the event and the time range. Well, I can see the time range by the side of the bar, so that's not helping me any. It would be helpful to maybe have the description of the event show up in that box, but that's not a thing. I don't have that flexibility. So that's a struggle point. The second thing I struggle with a little bit, and this is more so on the creation process, is when I go to create a new calendar entry, it's a lot of little steps that have to happen. It's not a very streamlined process. And I
It
say
is not.
streamlined because I want to compare it to, which is not a calendar program, but I want to compare it to how Todoist allows you to create an entry. Todoist, you can just type something in and say tomorrow, or say, tomorrow 8 a.m. That kind of natural language entry would go a huge distance for Google to be able to create these calendar entries quickly. Now, granted, there's additional stuff that gets captured in the calendar entries that you probably need to go back and backfill, but it's still useful there. The third thing that I have, and this is more of a basic challenge across the board, is when you start to get into the settings of the calendar, the settings interface is just, I'm sorry, you can tell it was designed by Google because it's got page after page after page of setting, and you're not quite sure what's connected to what or where a particular function is. And
Mhm.
it's got everything under the sun. Don't get me wrong, it's got all kinds of crazy settings in there. You can do things like setting for speedy meetings, so it starts them 5 minutes early and ends them 10 minutes. Ends them early. You can set different notifications. You can schedule, and I love some of the notification capabilities, like the ability to tell it every morning at a certain or every day at a certain time to send you an email summary of that day. I like that. Have that come, whatever's coming up next, you can easily get that in your inbox rather than having to check your calendar. Being able to create events from email rather than sending it to email, so you can email them over to you. It's not a bad thing. It's not perfect, but it's not bad. That type of functionality is really nice. But again, the settings control is just, it's a mess.
The
Really, in
setting
my book,
control
it's,
is a mess. It but it's as you said, it's designed by Google, and I was laughing as you said that because it is they give you a very long rope for you to hang yourself with it, and that's what is a shortcoming is it is great for the is designed by the geek for the geek, but when you get a non-geek dealing with that, it is very, very, very confusing for them, and most people don't know what to do with all that.
and here's one other thing. You mentioned it earlier, and this is one of my other things. Um, I wish they would offer more than just color assignment. I want tags. I want the ability to tag calendar events. And the reason being is because I want an easy way to be able to look at my calendar or a project calendar or something, and find only a subset of the dates that are in there. The only way for me to
Um,
do it now, and honestly, if you're listening to this and you know a way to do this, please, like, comment, subscribe, and put it in the
well,
comments and tell us, because I don't know a way to do this. But if there is a way, that'd be cool. I want to be able to go in and say, show me all the X type of event in this calendar. That to me would be really useful, combined with things like the agenda view, because now I start to treat my calendar like what it is, which is a database. And that's where I start to look at where calendar applications struggle a bit. Not just Google Calendar, but Outlook Calendar and others. When you start to look at other applications providing calendar functionality, like I'll use, for example, Notion. Notion allows you to build calendars inside it. Now, it doesn't have a lot of the scheduling capabilities that you have in a regular Google Calendar. But what it does have is every calendar entry is truly a database entry. So you can add as
Right.
much information as you want, as many properties as you want to it. You can track a lot of information on those quote calendars. Because at the end of the day, a calendar is nothing more than an action with a date attached. So it's really, honestly, a task. And if you let me back the question up that I'm about to ask you. Someone comes to you and says, "Okay, I have a lot of things that happen on specific days at specific times. Which makes more sense for me? Should I put it on a calendar or should I put it in a task list?" What's your reaction to that question?
Should I put it in the calendar?
What
I think
determines where something goes?
for me goes in the calendar when it's a big when it's again an appointment or an event. If it's a task, it will go. So for example, pick blood pressure medicine for pharmacy. Okay, that will never go. Even if you tell me if you don't pick it up by 3 p.m., the pharmacy will disappear. It will never make it to my calendar. It will make it to my task list with an alarm, with fencing, with many things, but it will never make it.
Mm-hmm. You went dark. There he is.
Sorry, I was
No
saying
problem.
if you give me that, okay, pick medicine by 3 p.m., that will get into my task. If you told me instead, let's have a call to discuss um, or to have a cup of coffee together, that will get into my calendar.
Okay. For me, the dividing line is really two things. One, if it clearly needs to be shared with somebody else, it has very little to do with the meat of the task itself. It's the fact that a calendar is a more familiar user experience. Everybody has seen a month calendar before. They kind of get it. They understand how a month calendar works. So it's intuitive. There's a very short learning curve for that. On the flip side, identifying what should go in the task list, things that are recurring, and it's specifically things that recur on a long recurrence cycle, to me are
Mm-hmm.
a natural candidate for a calendar. Things that recur on a very short recurrence cycle, and this is where I draw the big divider, you need to track if they were done, have to go on the task list. Because I think that's one of the biggest failings of a calendar is a calendar doesn't tell you did it happen. There isn't an indicator that it was successfully completed. And I'll go back to tools like Notion that have calendar capabilities in attached to their databases. There you can track this is when something was supposed to happen and
Mm-hmm.
it happened on that time. Um, I think that's what Google is trying to do with this tasks function built into the calendar, to be able to create calendar level tasks that you can then say, okay, it was completed, a very low altitude project management type of thing. I like that idea. I think it's got a long way to go, but I think that's one of the struggles and the dividing lines that I have as to what's the framework that you put around a calendar. Calendars to me are part of the big three because you've got note taking, calendars, and task management.
Correct.
Time management on a calendar can be critical, but it hits a ceiling of capability very quickly.
Very
And I
quickly.
think that's where you have to be cautious with it, um, as to determining exactly what you're going to be able to do with it. If I look at a particular entry, I'm just going to open up one of the entries on my calendar. It's nice to be able to go in there and see things like, oh, yes, I'm going to something. I'm going to, here's a Google Meet invite. I'm going to copy it. Here's the time schedule. It's recurring on a Wednesday. Uh, but it's not easy to do things like, capture some notes in there. which is probably not a bad thing. I mean, I don't want to use my calendar as a note taking tool. It's not built for that, it's not designed to do that. At least Google Calendar isn't. When I start to go beyond that, now I can put in descriptions and things like that, but beyond that, from a functionality standpoint, no, it hits its cap really fast. So I think Google Calendar is a perfect example of one of those tools out there that does its job really well, and it doesn't do anything but its job really well.
Yep. So
So go ahead.
I think we cover, and Google Calendar, it is a very good app in that sense because it has a lot um, of things. But I think with this we get to the end, unless you have something else to add to Google Calendars.
I have just one thing to add, and it's not specifically to Google Calendar, but it's a best practice for calendars that I think everybody should put in as part of their process. One of the things with calendar scheduling is we have this habit, and you'll see it especially in the business space, where you'll have appointment, 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 and the blocks will be one up against each other. And that's just because that's how things come across. That's a fatal mistake in my book. That's a recipe for burnout. In my mind, and what I recommend to people, one, set your calendar for a 15-minute interval. Absolutely. I don't think you need to go smaller than that. And anything bigger than that, I have found hasn't really helped a lot of people. Then
Agreed.
every time you put an appointment in there, whether it's automatic, I've written macros in Outlook to do this automatically, but in Google Calendar, you just do it by hand. Um, Before the appointment, as soon as you put an appointment on your calendar, before it, put in a 15-minute block, and after it, put a 15-minute block in. Because what you need to do is to have time to spin up into an activity, and then you need time to spin down out of it afterwards. So if it's putting away the notes, recapping, capturing action items, those two little blocks that bookend that action or that scheduled activity can mean all the difference of avoiding burnout during the course of the day. Now, I know sometimes people say, oh, wow, I get these meetings, they're back to back to back. That's the reason why it's so important to get those intervals in there quickly. So that
Mm-hmm.
way, when somebody's searching your calendar or your available time, they can say, oh, wait,
They
he's
see
not
the
really
blocks.
available at
Mm-hmm.
2:30. He's not available till 2:45. Those are discretionary too. If you find that you have to throw it out, okay, you can do that. What I suggest though is if you have to get rid of one of those, because let's say you've got two appointments that now truly have to be back to back, don't delete that spin down time, for example, after the first one. Move it to after the second. And if that spin down time period is now 30 minutes after those two meetings, well, honestly, 30 minutes is not that big of a deal if it means that you're going to accurately be able to work with the information that you got from those two appointments. And the best part is, if you don't need it, that becomes free time
That can
because you've
become free
allocated it.
time.
So, yeah, absolutely. I encourage everybody to do that. If you're going to block out time, I do this with some of the other automated tools. Calendly is one of them, where you can say that it automatically blocks out time before and after your appointment. To me, it just makes perfect sense. Why do I want to run myself ragged? There's no purpose to it. I'm going to have to spend that time anyway at some other point in the future because I'm going to have to do those activities that are the follow-ups of the predecessors to that session. I might as well just go ahead and plan for it. So, yeah, aside from that, calendar's a calendar. So I think Google Calendar, you can't really go wrong with it. It does have room to improve, but it does its job and it does it
Well,
well for the mass populace.
right. And we will cover more on a future episode about
Mm.
other platforms and like Outlook, for example. But for now, follow us where you like to listen to podcasts, like us, or subscribe to us and leave us a review. You can also interact with us in PersonalProductivity.club. There is a channel for cross-platform. So we are Augusto Pinaud and Art Gelwicks. See you next time from your favorite device. Thank you.